Hey guys, it's Dean. There really isn't much I can say as an introduction to this video. Would any of you be absolutely taken aback if I told you that Super Mario World was my favorite game of all time? Would any of you argue with me if I said Sonic's third mainline game on the Sega Genesis was the best Sonic game of the 90s? Like, sure, I understand that you might have a different opinion, but you wouldn't necessarily be surprised by either of those statements. I, along with many other fans of Sonic and Mario games in the 90s, hold the opinion that these two titles were the peak of their respective series. They both somehow managed to improve on the two already exquisite titles that many thought were the pinnacle of gaming. And they both have forced me to ask the most difficult question I've had to ask on this channel. Which game is better, Super Mario World or Sonic the Hedgehog 3? And Knuckles. You know that Doki Doki Panic meme, where the YouTuber jokingly pretends nobody knew that Mario 2 was a reskin of Doki Doki Panic? Well, we need one of those for the whole quote-unquote and Knuckles thing. You guys all know the story, and I don't think it's necessary for me to discuss the combination of the two games. It's Sonic 3. That's all that everyone has viewed it as for a couple of decades now. Even if some of us, including yours truly, as a child, didn't realize you were supposed to combine the games. I don't think I ever got far enough in Sonic 3 as a kid with or without Sonic and Knuckles locked onto it to know they were both two halves of one game. I just figured Sonic and Knuckles' whole gimmick was letting you play as Knuckles in Sonic 2 and 3, while providing you with a separate game altogether known as Sonic and Knuckles. Regardless, the whole of Sonic 3 is loved to this day. As I stated earlier, many claim it to be their favorite 2D Sonic title of the 90s. And really, the only reason I have to add "of the 90s" at the end of that is because of Sonic Mania making a strong case of being an improvement. But prior to Sonic Mania, Sonic 3 being the best 2D game in the series was generally undisputed for roughly 20 years. And that's despite the fact that it never got any real re-releases for a long time. It managed to come out on all of the main collections and compilations as Sonic 1 and 2 and saw a Steam release in early 2011. But beyond that, it missed out on every compilation and re-release that the other classic Sonic games saw. And although it took about a decade to hear anything official about it, it's because of licensing issues related to the music done by Michael Jackson, and the fact that he passed away in 2009, something that's fairly well known by the gaming community. Regardless, this means that Sonic 3 missed out on the awesome Christian Whitehead mobile ports that Sonic 1, 2, and CD got to enjoy in the 2010s. Fortunately, however, it was included in the Sonic Origins collection, with all of the facelifts the other titles received from the Christian Whitehead series. I personally consider Origins to be definitive at this point. I know there's a ton of issues with the collection itself that hardcore fans will point out, and for hardcore fans, they're better off playing Sonic Air or another modded version of Sonic 3. But for mainline gamers looking to play this game on a current generation console, this is a completely viable way to play the game. It's the way I played the game for this review, and in fact, it was the first time playing Sonic 3 outside of the original Genesis version for me, because the Genesis version was already almost perfect. I do have to admit that I faced one, maybe two glitches during my playthrough, but that's basically in line with the glitches I faced playing the mobile ports too for the other games, and it's far from being a deal breaker for me. All in all, I'm a big fan of Origins. It's nice to have an official way to experience the games in a night complete package with all the extras it offers. Moving over to Mario, Super Mario World was the perfect launch title for the Super Nintendo. By this point, everyone knew who Mario was and what he was all about. Everyone understood that buying one of his games meant you were about to have an excellent time for a long time. So if you're Nintendo and you're about to release a second console in an established market that you basically brought back to life with your previous console, the greatest way to get it into people's hands is to make Super Mario World a launch title. It might be the timing of when I was born, but I don't think I know a single person that hasn't played this game. I know of plenty of people that didn't play the NES games, but Super Mario World seems like it was played by literally everyone, including people that are hardcore Sony or Xbox fanboys. Before the PlayStation release, Super Nintendo held all of the power in the market when it came to third-party games, and really any genre that you would now more likely find on a PlayStation. So many of the people I know that fought for a PS5 these past couple of years started with a Super Nintendo before jumping ship to Sony. Despite the Super Nintendo's vast library, everyone had a hand on Super Mario World at one point or another, because when it came out, it was the game to have, and being a launch title made sure everyone had it. And now, in 2022, it's still considered amongst the greatest games of all time. I'm not even exaggerating. IGN still rates it as the second best game of all time behind Breath of the Wild. So many different YouTubers will claim it's the best game they've ever played, or that it's their favorite. And I mean, why wouldn't they? It's fun, intuitive, looks great, sounds great, plays amazing, and introduced us all to Yoshi. What more could you ask for? I, and many others, love Super Mario World. And, well, might be unpopular, but I love the Game Boy Advance version of the title more than the original Super Nintendo version. I'm not saying the Super Nintendo version isn't absolutely amazing. I just think that if the Super Nintendo version is a 9.9 out of 10, then the Game Boy Advance does that ever so slightly quality of life improvement to make it a 10 out of 10. Actually, honestly, it's more like the Super Nintendo version is a 10 out of 10 and the Game Boy Advance version is a 10.1 out of 10. Right. Anyway, I know the Game Boy Advance version has washed out colors to make it brighter and the characters have their sound bites or whatever, but it doesn't bother me at all. I'll concede that the game looked and sounded better on the original version, but the Game Boy Advance version allows you to track your completion progress, and for me that makes it better. Some other differences that I also prefer, but I won't necessarily die on a hill for, include the fact that if you get hit while powered up in the Super Nintendo version, you go back all the way to Small Mario instead of Mushroom Mario. The Game Boy Advance version allows you to play as Luigi whenever you want, and he actually plays differently, so it changes the game up a bit. The ghost houses have collectible Yoshi coins, and something I love is different colored Yoshis are able to be grabbed anywhere instead of just in Star World after you unlock them. You can even game the system and guarantee you get a blue or red Yoshi by having a cape or fire flower respectively. All of these for me are improvements over the original version, but like I said, the big one for me is the fact that you can actually track your progress when going for full completion. My earliest memory of Super Mario World is kind of random, to be honest. I was super young and visiting a family friend's house. When we got there, the parents had them pause the game they were playing, and on the screen was a baby red Yoshi being held by Mario. It's such a weird memory, but I remember when I finally bought the game shortly after, I couldn't figure out where to find that red Yoshi for months. Of course, now I realize it's because I didn't know how to find a secret exit to get to Star World. But back then, I had convinced myself that I was seeing things on that pause screen at my friend's house. I played a lot of Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, but it honestly wasn't until I bought it on the Game Boy Advance that I really started getting good at it. I guess that's the difference between playing a game at 4 or 5 years old and playing it at 11 or 12. I remember trading in Super Mario Advance for it and never once regretting it, despite the fact that I absolutely love the Super Mario Bros. 2 Game Boy Advance port. It's just that Super Mario World was an improvement in basically every way. I think I spent most of, if not all of the summer leading up to 7th grade playing this game, and then I just kept playing it for years. I started watching speedrunners online figuring out how to mimic what they do so I could speedrun the game myself. I think my best time was around 12 minutes, and I remember achieving that by practicing what others were doing online over and over again until I managed to match their time or at least get close to it. This is one of those games that I have to revisit every few years. The only other game I can think of that I play as frequently is probably Super Mario 64. They both were just such amazing platformers for the time, and it's no surprise that both of them have their diehard fans to this day. Now take all of that passion, obsession, and love for a classic game and multiply it by 1,000 to account for the craziness of Sonic fans, and you have the blue-tinted love for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. The first time I played Sonic 3 was when I traded my Super Nintendo for my friend's Sega Genesis at around 2nd or 3rd grade. At the time, I was very much little brother, so I got to experience most of this game as Tails. And well, when I found out he could fly in this game, I was blown away. I couldn't do that in Sonic 2. All of a sudden, there were moments where my older brother had to rely on me. Sonic 3 was designed just differently enough to Sonic 2 that it made the game worth exploring, which meant that Player 2 got a chance to shine because Player 1 would often need a lift. At the time, I probably thought this was the better game strictly because Tails could fly. I'm really not sure what my obsession was with flying characters in the early 90s, but it always made me like a game more when a character could fly. Probably because it was way easier to control. Regardless, as the years went on, I started to play this game with more skill and figured out how to reach areas without needing Tails. Eventually, I realized that Sonic and Knuckles wasn't a sequel and started playing the whole game together as a package, and man, was it awesome! Every single time I've ever picked up this game to play it in the past 20 years or so, I've managed to love it even more than the last time I played it. Back then, it was all about finding a way to the end of the stage. Then it slowly became about finding different routes. Then it became about finding different hidden areas and whatnot. The levels are so vast and different that even the most recent playthrough I did, I managed to find hidden areas that I either completely forgot about or haven't seen altogether. I don't have a single bad memory playing this game. Even the stupid barrel and casino night was worth getting pissed off about all those years ago, because of the memories it created for me that I cherish to this day. Man, I love this game. And Mario World. I don't know how I'm about to review both of them, but here goes. Super Mario World was an improvement on Super Mario Bros. 3's art style in every way, shape, and form. There, I said it. All of you arguing that Mario 3 had a better art style are just flat out wrong. Mario World is way more visually appealing than Mario 3. Yoshi's Island blows anything we saw in Mushroom Kingdom away. The stage settings, the baddies, the world map, all of it. The colors are much better in this game. And I'm not even talking compared to the NES version. I mean the GBA port. I don't care how subjective I'm being right now. Nobody said I was required to be objective in my videos. And this video isn't even about Mario 3 vs Mario World. I just wanted to touch up on the fact that it's absurd to me that anyone could think Mario 3 looks better when Mario's eyes are literally nothing but a black dot. Okay, sorry, I'm done. Well, kind of. Everything I just said about the art style goes double for the music. Super Mario World has the best soundtrack in the classic era of Mario games. Actually, I'm going to extend that to the Sonic games too. This game's music is so memorable and iconic that it rivals the inaugural soundtracks in Sonic 1 and Mario 1 for most recognizable tunes. Sonic 3 definitely has some higher highs. Granted, many of them are lost to the Origins port, but let's pretend they're not for the sake of this video comparison. Sonic 3 was the first time I could use the word atmospheric to describe the music and audio in general in a video game. It doesn't necessarily hit a home run on every track, but some of these stages are made so much better by the music in them. It's hard to explain, but some of the zones in Sonic 3 feel less like you're playing a game and listening to a soundtrack, and more like you're actually in the game itself. It's probably no surprise that it's primarily in the zones that Michael Jackson had a hand in. The prototype tracks that were implemented in Origins feel up to par with the rest of the game, but the tracks we lost were some of the best in the series. Regardless, I don't want to hound too much on the changes in the music for the Origins collection. Sonic fans have always said they'd rather Sonic 3 gets re-released with different music than not be re-released at all. And well, now that Origins has come out, suddenly they changed their mind. But what are you gonna do? All these channels need a reason for someone to click on, so they might as well make a video complaining about how Origins ruined Sonic 3. Anyway, the sound and visuals have always been second nature to me when it comes to these games. So while I do love the soundtrack and the art style, and might favor one over the other, I don't think it really plays a role in my final verdict at the end of this video. But if I had to choose, I think Sonic 3 has the edge over Mario in looks, but Mario World has it beat in sound. So this is a bit awkward because I'm not sure where to begin. There are so many different ways to approach Super Mario World, and I mean that literally. For all of you that are fans of open world games with varying paths and multiple routes, this game's overworld should appeal to you. From the first moment you boot up the game, it gives you the option of moving to the left or moving to the right. Either of these choices could be the first level you experience in the game. Both levels are good about teaching you a few new aspects of the game, while also reteaching you some tropes taken from the previous title. You might notice your moveset has improved a bit. You can now perform a spin jump that allows you to break blocks and even bounce off some areas that you can't normally bounce off of. You'll see some new baddies and some slopes, and some new power-ups such as the feather that is harder to master than the leaf in Mario 3, but so much more rewarding once you do master it. If you went left, you'll discover the first block switch, which will teach you to keep an eye out for the other switches throughout the game when you notice empty squares in the stages. And when you go to the stage on the right, you'll also get to see Yoshi for the first time. Yoshi is awesome. He adds an extra hit to your health, and as long as you're able to catch up to him when you take damage, you'll get to have unlimited hits. Having a Yoshi is basically the equivalent of Sonic's ring health system in that regard. Yoshi also provides you the ability to eat up some baddies that you might not be able to defeat otherwise, and also provides you with that extra jump while willingly and happily plummeting to his own demise. Come on, look at that face and tell me he's not happily sacrificing himself so you can get that secret ending. So while Mario 3 had more power-ups, I think Mario World's moveset, in addition of Yoshi, more than make up for it. Mario 3 had too many gimmicky items and some that are repetitive, overpowered, or really only used once. Mario World streamlined it by giving you one projectile item in the Fire Flower and one flying item in the Feather, while adding Yoshi as a perfect companion on this conquest. As you advance through the game, you'll start noticing different types of stages, including water levels, forests, caves, and whatnot. You'll see castles that require you to defeat Resnors, as well as castles that allow you to take on a Koopaling with a fun iconic cutscene shortly after you defeat it. Part of the fun of this game is figuring out how you want to go through the map. World 1 is always going to be the first one you play, but once you get to World 2, you can pretty much go anywhere after that via the star portals. But it's not that easy. You'll have to find secret exits to get to where you want to go. You might eventually start to notice that the stages that are colored red contain secret exits. You also might accidentally stumble upon a secret exit in a ghost house and figure out that those also sometimes contain secret exits. Maybe you'll end up at a green pipe and as a result be able to skip through the world like you did in Mario 3. Maybe you'll discover another colored switch, or decide to play through all of Star Road to unlock Yoshi's. and find yourself with some super difficult levels to play through as a reward with a message upon completion that'll make any 11-year-old have chills and be proud of their accomplishment. The point is, there's just so much thought put into this game's overworld that it's equally as memorable as the gameplay itself. Everyone's gone to Forest of Illusion and got lost because they didn't find a secret exit they were supposed to. Everyone's made it to World 6 and be in a level and watched Mario make that walk of shame. Everyone was flabbergasted when they saw Bowser's head float out from beneath the water for the first time and made it to World 7. That's the thing about this game. There's just so many moments where you just can't help but stop and appreciate what's happening. The feeling when you realize you could actually defeat a charging Chuck, or mastering the timing of defeating Reznors and Koopalings, or solving the puzzles in ghost houses that you might have spent hours on, or finally making your way to Bowser himself and having one of the greatest standoffs with him to date. Bowser shows up with all of his glory in a clown car, ready to do damage. As you fight him, you'll even get glimpses of Peach asking for help, just to add to the intensity of the moment. The music at this point fits perfectly too. It's really one of those boss battles where you feel like you have to be in the zone to beat it the first time. Especially when you consider everything you endured to make it to Bowser on that amazing journey with this giant overworld. Or, well, if you took shortcuts throughout the stages and came in through Bowser's back door. Either way, the battle is epic, and the first time you defeat Bowser in this game is so rewarding because it's the first true challenging Bowser battle in this series. Man, I love this game. I love that Yoshi gets powers depending on which colored Koopa's in his mouth. And those powers are the same powers that the varying colors of Yoshi have by default, with any Koopa in their mouth. I love when you find the famous secret area and have to decide if you want to take a trip across the map to grab some power-ups on a Yoshi and make the trip all the way back to where you want to be. I love all of the different types of secrets you can come across and how the game does a decent job hinting you as you move on. It creates set pieces that might replicate a similar secret from earlier on, just a bit more obscure. I even love the challenge behind collecting the Yoshi coins and going for 100% completion. I mean, sure, there's at least one or two levels that basically require a guide if you want to complete them. But these levels on a whole are so fun, enjoyable, and a treat to look at and listen to, that finding the coins for the extra replayability is worth it just for the sake of redoing the levels. Don't worry though, you're still rewarded when you fully complete it. Nothing super game breaking, but there are visual changes to the game that reward major accomplishments and make sure anyone who plays knows what you accomplished. This game is almost perfect. You could probably critique repetitive level themes and music if you wanted to, or hate on the optional coin collecting missions, or critique certain spikes of difficulty at random moments. No game can truly be considered 100% perfect. But if you're rounding up, this game is a 10 out of 10 in almost every metric. And I don't care how biased, nostalgic, or subjective I'm being. Super Mario World is easily my favorite game of all time. Well, maybe except Mario 64, but that's a discussion for another day. Luckily for the Blue Blur, being Nintendo's favorite game of all time does not automatically mean I think it's the better game in this comparison. Since I decided to approach the Mario review by starting from the opening of the game, I guess I could do the same thing for Sonic 3. You're given an opening sequence that explains everything you really need to know about the game. Super Sonic flies in, crashes into Knuckles, he takes all of your emeralds and leaves you alone on Angel Island. This feels a bit different to the last Sonic game though. The stages look larger. There's all these areas all over the place that might pique your interest and make you want to explore. You still could do the whole speed momentum thing and hold right and jump just like you did in the last Sonic game. And some areas will require it. But some areas will also require you to slow down and do some platforming. Unlike Sonic 1 and 2, the platforming areas aren't a drag either. They're a good test of your control over Sonic, especially in the first level where it sets the tone for the rest of the game. Sonic 3 is quite frankly the perfect balance between speed and platforming in 2D Sonic. I genuinely believe that, and I enjoy both aspects of that equally. I love the exploration in this game too. There's so much hidden throughout the stages that I find myself being surprised by hidden areas all the time. And it's actually worth exploring because hidden throughout the levels are all these golden rings which take you to the Blue Spheres bonus stage. Easily the best bonus stage in the classic series too, both in the way you find them and when you actually play them. They are a great test for your reflex and skill and are easy to master after a few attempts. And while they do get significantly harder in the second half of the game, where you're going for a second set of emeralds, it's still very much beatable and is made all the better with the coin system in Origins that allow you to repeat a bonus stage without having to find another ring. Similar to previous games, I don't really like how Supersonic and Hypersonic for that matter break the game, and I think it's better to experience this game at least once without using the transformation, but I gotta admit, being able to transform into them is one of the coolest things in gaming. You feel so strong and invincible, and after hearing all about going super through the Saiyan arc, when you finally see Goku transform, it's one of the highlights of your childhood. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong series. Anyway, in this game you can play as either Goku, Krillin, or Piccolo, and full completion entails finding the 7 Dragon Balls in their playthroughs. Okay, I'll stop now. Well, at least for now. I'll probably be doing this again in Vegeta's game. Sonic 3 also sees the addition of power-ups in the form of elemental shields. You have your fire shield that protects you against fire, but also allows you to do a forward burst, obliterating everything in your path. The water shield throws you in a bubble and allows you to drop quickly to bounce and reach higher places, while also allowing you to remain underwater without drowning. The electric shield protects you from electric sparks, gives you a double jump, and also pulls in any rings in the vicinity to collect them. They're a great addition to the game, and finding elemental shields is always worth it. But you also have the Insta Shield. I hate to admit that I think this is possibly the best move in all of 2D Sonic. Once you start getting the hang of using the Insta Shield, it's so hard to play a Sonic game without it. You start to fly through the game and not worry about where you hit badniks from. As long as you do that quick swooshing press at the right time, you won't take a hit. It's such a simple addition to the game, yet so worth it. As you progress through Angel Island Zone, you'll see it go up in flames, and it's so cool seeing the normally green opening level just burn down like that. The scene with the giant ship dropping bombs is also iconic. Obviously I know that you can just hold right to avoid it, but the first time playing this game you might make the mistake of trying to dodge the bombs and facing death. And I've always appreciated that you can see Robotnik out in the distance flying rather than just pulling up to him and finding him waiting like you would normally would. And as soon as you beat him, you'll see that stupid red echidna again, trolling you and throwing you down to the water below, where you'll experience your first smooth stage transition. I love the little transitions between zones and acts. I think it adds a good amount of character and continuity to the game, and I definitely appreciate it. But that being said, can the fanbase please cool it about these transitions? I swear sometimes people talk about them like they're what make the games great, because there's a connection between levels or whatever. Like, yeah, they're nice, but calm down people, even without them the game would be amazing. Anyway, Knuckles' antics sees you falling down to Water Village, but for some reason some people think this is pronounced Water Village. As far as second zones go, this one does everything better than Chemical Plant did in Sonic 2, and isn't as memorable as the result. It throws you into some amazingly fast areas while also requiring slow platforming, specifically as a result of some water areas. There's a good amount of exploration here too, and I appreciate that. And I'm a big fan of the boss battle and the gimmicks they have. Marble Garden is up next, and the game really starts to test your platforming, but also provides some speedy moments throughout. Unlike most people, I enjoy the sections with a spinning top since I think it provides a little different challenge to the game and adds a little bit of variety. All in all, I like all of the challenges the zone provides. Some tropes are only used in this zone, so it makes it very unique. But if you want to talk unique, Carnival Night. Okay, maybe it's not that unique since every Sonic game seems to have a level that's similar to this. Heck, I almost called it Casino Night Zone. Hot take, this is my least favorite zone in the game. It feels ripped straight out of Sonic 1. It's slow, time-consuming, has stupid moments where you're just flat out frustrating regardless of how many times you've played the game. The only cool thing about this level is how memorable it is because it's aesthetic and because of the barrel. There's a certain sense of nostalgia to it as a result. It's also one of the levels that suffers from the change in music, but even the original soundtrack didn't make me enjoy it per se. However, Ice Cap Zone 100% is less enjoyable with the change in music. Not that I consider the new music bad, but Ice Cap Zone original music actually makes you feel like you're out there. This zone in particular is what I meant when I said this game was the first game that had music that I could describe as atmospheric. Plus, the naming of the zone makes me crave Timmy's, so there's that. But aside from that, I appreciate the opening snowboarding portion of this level, and the general difficulty spike it contains. It's a good transition to Launch Base Zone, which sees you fighting to stop Robotnik's giant station from taking off. I like that as the stage starts you can see the Death Egg in the background getting ready. I like the boss battles you face and the ending cutscene after you defeat them showing the Death Egg crashing down. As far as the standalone game goes, it was a nice ending to the Sonic 3 half of this game. But once you reach Mushroom Hill Zone, the game starts to really take off. The levels in the and Knuckles half of this game are so much more unique than the Sonic 3 half. Mushroom Hill Zone's aesthetic and its fun boss fight, Flying Battery Zone providing a good difficulty spike that carries on to the rest of the game, Sandopolis Zone really testing your wits and forcing you to use your brain in some crucial moments to move forward, Lava Reef having two completely different acts equally frustrating, unique, and memorable, Hidden Palace Zone being an obscure setting with this giant Death Egg in the background, while also putting you up in that epic fight against Knuckles with the mural in the background foreshadowing what's to come. The legendary Super Sonic. Seeing Knuckles finally join your team because Robotnik betrays him. Him opening all these portals for you so you climb through to the next zone. And I mean, Sky Sanctuary. Come on, it's so epic. All these weird Robotnik robots that make you feel like you're nearing the end of the game. Coming face to face with Metal Sonic. Running your way up a collapsing sanctuary at full speed. It's so cool and memorable, I love it. And just as Sanctuary collapses, we finally land on the Death Egg. It's been foreshadowed all game, but here we are. And it's no walk in the park. There's all these challenging gimmicks with gravity you might face, tons of potential death moments, random areas where you'll have to use a combination of your brain and platforming skills. It pretty much checks all of the boxes for a difficulty spiked final zone, including the final boss, which you're allowed to face with rings until you die the first time. Then it's a one-hit death like the previous games, which I actually prefer now. A good battle nonetheless, with multiple phases and likely a lot of deaths while you learn the patterns. But finally, assuming you have collected all of the gems, you get to take on the real final boss, in what can only be described as an epic ending to the classic era. Super Sonic, or Hypersonic if you've gotten all 14 emeralds, flies through space and absolutely obliterates the final boss. I mean, sure, you might have to use just a little bit of skill here, but it's not even remotely challenging, and it's just meant to wow you. And boy did it wow me. Such a great ending to the game. And with that, Angel Island has risen up to the sky, and the credits roll. My most recent playthrough of Sonic 3 was perhaps the best playthrough I've done for it. I think it was my first time where I actively wanted to find as many hidden rings and bonus stages during the playthrough as quickly as I could. As a result, I explored so much more of these massive stages than I thought I would, and I enjoyed the game so much more as a result. It's amazing how big some of these levels are, and how many different routes are available in each zone. It's so much more worth it to play through this game with Knuckles and Tails because they actually provide different routes due to their abilities, which adds even more to the replayability of this game. I enjoyed Sonic 3 so much that I was half considering 100% completing it again with Tails and Knuckles as soon as I finished it with Sonic. And the only reason I didn't was because I wanted to get right onto this review while my feelings for the initial playthrough was still fresh. But when it comes to how much I actually love a game, you can't really beat what I feel for Super Mario World. It's such a wholesome, iconic, and memorable game that I don't know how anyone could not consider it the greatest game of all time. But as I said before, the love I have for a game does not determine if it wins this comparison video. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm gonna have to give this one to Sonic 3. I spent so much of my life thinking about how perfect Super Mario World was, that I think I forgot to think about how perfect Sonic 3 was. I always knew it was the best Sonic game, but I don't know why it never occurred to me that it was the best game in the classic era for both Mario and Sonic games. And I mean, why wouldn't it be? It came out a solid 4 years after Super Mario World. It had 3 different Sonic games before it to build off of. The movement and gameplay were perfected by this point. As amazing as it feels to control Mario in Super Mario World, learning to control Sonic and mastering his movement in Sonic 3 is so much more rewarding. As great as the openness of Mario World's overworld was, Sonic 3's levels in and of themselves had so many more different areas to explore in the stages themselves, and almost all of them are hits and don't feel repetitive. The longer and more challenging stages with varying gimmicks more than make up for the fact that there's technically less of them than in Mario World. It might have taken me 20 or so years to admit it, but I think Sonic did actually manage to surpass Mario in the early 90s. But he wasn't able to do it in Sonic 1, 2, or CD in my opinion. It took him until February 1994 to beat 1990's Super Mario World. As a Mario and Nintendo fan born in the 90s, I genuinely believe the peak of 2D platforming occurred with Sonic 3 in 1994. Well, at least it was momentarily, because a certain other franchise released close to the end of 1994. And as Reggie once said, if you listen, you can hear it coming. Thanks for watching. Dean out.